I worked at a sandwich shop for a while. And this might surprise you, but I didn't like it very much. The customers were mean to me, my management were dicks, I started to hate the smell of bread. You get the idea. My suffering isn't unique here. So I hope you'll understand what I'm talking about when I tell you that during those grueling rush hours when my mind was allowed to drift away from hoagies and prosciutini, I'd have a weird realization of something I thought I already knew. That I am human. That I am at my core not a sandwich maker. That I am going to go home and talk to my mom and watch movies and laugh and cry and that I already have done those things. It's a weird feeling to have and an even weirder feeling to think about having. How do I stop having it? Chainsaw Man is popular with the youth these days, and it's easy to see why. Denji, aka Chainsaw Man, is badass, the girls he gets with are hot, and he just like me for real. But of course it goes deeper than that. I'd be far from the first to point out how loneliness affects the manga, how Denji spends the first half really just desperate for any woman's attention. But what's often overlooked is how Denji's job and his relation to it play into all this. I mean, Makima, who is usually portrayed as just some hot girl Denji's really obsessed with, is also his boss. So I think it's fair to view her as an extension of his job. But before we get into that, let's get into some background. A large part of Chainsaw Man is about dehumanization, right? Like, a lot of characters are not fully human, both literally and metaphorically. In fact, it becomes clear that once you stick around in the devil hunting business for a while, you eventually have to sacrifice some part of yourself to a devil to have any chance of staying alive. Parallels to real life are, I don't know, maybe intended? But anyway, Denji's story, he starts off already really dehumanized, because he kind of doesn't really have any other choice. One day he even pretends to eat a cigarette to just have something to eat that night. After he gets the job as a devil hunter, he finds out that if he decides to quit or not work with them anymore, they'll kill him. And for the same reason he got the job. Not being fully human. And this really isn't a conflict for Denji. I mean, it seems to bother him a little bit, but I mean, even after he knows this, he continues to be grateful for his job, passionate even. And on top of providing a roof over his head, the only reason that is really because of Makima. And again, if we view her as a representation of his job, it's interesting that Denji feels a lot of loyalty to her, and she's just kind of using him. And for what? He's not particularly skilled. He's not really that brave. Sure, he's one of the weapon humans, but it's implied even beyond that. There's something about Denji that people want and kind of need. So what is it? Well, it's because he has no self-respect. He's easily manipulated into doing whatever his job requires, and he constantly puts his life in danger without any real vendetta or greater purpose. It's really just because some girl is giving him a chance. Now, he also thinks that he's living luxuriously, but what he considers luxury is jam, toast, and an apartment with 3 roommates. And it's not just Denji. Like I said earlier, everyone gives up a little part of them for the job. And I'm talking about the manga characters, but perhaps part of that is why so many young people can relate to the manga so well. Of course, dehumanization isn't just something that happens to you at jobs. Many of Denji's co-workers, under the same conditions he are the people who view him as inhuman. So how do we stop the cycle? Ever notice how the bathhouse in Spirited Away takes away people's essence? It's a fairly obvious point when you think about it. For Chihiro to get a job with Yubaba, she literally takes her name. And on top of that, before she gets the job, everyone at the bathhouse is constantly complaining about how she smells human. They even smell her before seeing her. But after she gets hired, it's not really brought up again. This point of changing people runs through the movie. At the beginning, Chihiro's parents are turned to pigs, and at the end, we find out Haku is actually a river spirit. An aspect of the movie I can't recreate in this essay is how weird it is at the start, but how you just kind of get used to that. You learn to just deal with the strangeness in the same way that Chihiro does. And none of the other characters ever show any sympathy towards the understandably lost girl, instead ridiculing her when she barely knows the rules and procedures. They really only start to respect her when she is kind of accidentally good at her job by realizing that a stink spirit is actually a river spirit. Although I guess it's not really an accident, it's a part of her character. A good example of how we, the audience, become adapted to the weirdness of the film is actually mirrored in Haku and Chihiro's parents. When at the beginning of the film her parents turn into pigs, it's weird and horrifying and strange, but at the end of the film, when we kind of all of a sudden learn that Haku is a river spirit, it feels natural. Sure, it's said earlier that Chihiro and Haku knew each other, which kind of foreshadows it, but for the most part it's still not really built up, and we're fine with it because we've learned the rules of the world, and we've learned that forgetting who you are is just kind of something the bathhouse does. So how does Chihiro escape this? How does she avoid falling into the bathhouse cycle and losing her essence and humanity? Chihiro's power comes by always trying to view people as what they are. People. Okay, well, technically they're spirits, but you get what I mean. She's the only person who helps the stink spirit. She's the only person who can help Haku find out who he really is. And at the climax of the film, the whole thing is she needs to tell pigs apart from her parents. Seeing people's humanity is at the core of Chihiro's character, and it's what saves her fate from losing hers. So I guess I'm ending this video by telling you that if you want to avoid becoming a soulless husk because of your job, you have to be nice to people. Trite, maybe, but if there's any time to re-say it, it's now.